What's up, everybody? It's Jeffrey Lyles welcoming you to another edition of Lyles Movie Files. Joining me today, I have the great pleasure of introducing and welcoming you all to Joshua Williamson, one of my favorite comic book writers out there today. And as you can tell from the background, we're going to be talking about the Energon universe, specifically Cobra Commander #1. Josh has also done Duke #1. If you have enjoyed G.I. Joe in any capacity, I highly recommend these books. If you haven't read Duke, Cobra Commander #1, it's going to blow you away on so many levels. And as basically a lifelong G.I. Joe fan, I could not get enough of either one of these. I was like, where's issue 2 right away? Josh, what are your thoughts when you got this gig first and foremost?
Well, I've been a lifelong G.I. Joe fan too. I'm a big G.I. Joe guy. You can't tell, like, this is all DC stuff, but if you look over here, I have a bunch of the toys and stuff over here, and so it's like I have a lot of, I have all the classified toys. I have all of them, even the repaints. Like I'm a big G.I. Joe guy, and like,
I was going to
I
ask you
started
about
talking to.
classifieds.
Oh, dude, yeah, I have them. I have this Cobra Commander on my desk. I have the one from the His Tank.
Oh, great,
I
great.
have
I
this
still have
one.
to unbox
Yeah,
my
this one.
Histon.
Oh, dude, yeah, I unboxed mine like the day I got it. I actually, yeah, I love it. That's actually over here because I have no idea where I want to put that. Like, it's so big.
That's why I haven't unboxed mine.
But yeah, I have a bunch of stuff. I actually have like, I didn't realize I was doing it at first, but I definitely have been troop building. So I have a crazy Cobra army. I didn't realize I was doing it. Like, I ordered a couple things by accident twice, and
Uh-huh.
so all of a sudden when I looked at everything, I'm like, oh man, I have a pretty big like Cobra army. But so I'm thinking about maybe something different with them. But anyway, yeah, like, so years ago, man, I don't know, like 5, 6 years ago, I think it was a long time ago. Um, I was talking to Skybound, and I have a good relationship with them, and so I was talking to them about stuff, and they asked me, they were like, what are licenses you think you'd ever be interested in if you were ever going to do, a license thing? And I was like, oh, I'm never doing licenses again. It's either Big Two or Crater On. I'm never doing anything again, except for one thing. I was like, there's one. I'm like, listen, I can give you a list. I was like, there's stuff I'm interested in and stuff like that. I think it'd be fun to do, but there's really only one. And I was like, I have a notebook of G.I. Joe ideas. And they were like, oh, okay, interesting. And that led just like every few months, like once a year, I would talk to them. We'd have a conversation about it, And he would tell me stuff. He's like, oh, Robert has this crazy idea that he wants to do. And I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. I love the crazy ideas. And it's funny, like, I mean, the reason why I kind of start telling the story that far back is because there was never a phone call. There was never a like, oh, hey, can you do this? Or do you want to do it? None of that. It was because it was a steady stream of conversations that even at one point I was talking to them about it. And I was like, wait, am I doing this? Like, am I the one writing this? And they were like, yeah, we want you to do it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. All right, cool. They're like, yeah, your name's always been the one that's been like penciled in for this. Like, do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah. Like, here, and so we just kept talking about it, dude. And it's been surreal because it's like, it was the right timing too, because I feel like there's a really good energy with G.I. Joe right now, particularly because of Classified, I think it reignited the fan base. People started talking about it again differently, you have, this is spoilers, but you have that scene at the end of the Transformers movie, so I feel like there's a really good energy right now about G.I. Joe. So it's been surreal, but it's been a lot of fun, dude. It's been like a dream come true.
G.I. Joe has this unique thing where you've got fans of the cartoon, you got fans of the comic book, and sometimes they mix up, and sometimes it's just one or the other. How did you strike this balance of accommodating fans of both, where it's like a little Easter egg here, and then like, oh, cool, this is something from the comic book, where we're deep dive, and people can appreciate it as you create this brand new take on G.I. Joe?
Well, because I was able to, I'm a fan of all of it. And I actually came into the property because of the toys and the cartoons. Like, that's my age. I came in from those areas.
Mm-hmm.
But with the comics, I discovered the comics a little later. And I had a lot of friends that were really into the comics later. Like when I was in college and stuff, like I met people who were very much the comics people. So I got to hear their perspective of it, And then I started reading it in that window because that was also a time period where Marvel was re-releasing those big ones, right? The collections of Larry Hama.
Yeah.
And so I started reading that. So I read it later. And so I was able to come at it from like two different perspectives early on, even just in my fandom of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
and know how they're different. Like you know what I mean? It allowed me to kind of see things that like all these things are different. And so I was able to take all that energy and just really sit down and cherry pick, right? Be like, wait, what in here do I like? You know, because you have to start there, because if I'm doing stuff I don't like, that's a whole problem. I think we've talked about
Right.
before, you know. I think it's a danger people fall into when you're working on comic books. Like you never want to do something like, if you don't like it, that's a problem. Like if you're making something you wouldn't buy, that's a problem.
Mhm.
And so for me, I was just going through and just looking at everything and saying like, okay, what are the bits and pieces here that I find interesting? And then how do I make this work? And I actually found I felt really easy answers. And because one of the big ones was, because we're starting at the beginning, and obviously it has to be ours, right? Like it has to be Skybound's take. We can't repeat what everyone else
Mhm.
has done. And like, listen, if you're a huge Larry Hama fan, like you have that comic that's still coming out every month, you
Right.
know? So it's like that is still there, but we had to make sure this was ours. And so what we ended up doing is we were able to go and start at the beginning, start at like day one, the beginning of the story, you know, start here and then start working our way out from there. But then it was a matter of like, okay, what do we love? What makes us get pumped up? What makes us be like, yes, you know, like that was it. And because you have me, you have Sean Mackwitz, you have Robert Kirkman, you know, you have Daniel Warren Johnson, who are fans of these properties, you know, everything was coming from a place of love and excitement and fun. And like, that's why Mercer's in the first issue of Dude, because I loved
Right.
Mercer when I was a kid, right? And I was talking to another comic writer who, when he was a kid, he also loved Mercer. So when he read Duke #1, he was like, "Oh hell yeah, like Mercer's right here," you know. So it's stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like, and I think if you approach it like that, of like just love and respect for the property, you can get a lot more trust that way, you know. And so that's where I've been approaching this, is looking at it like that. But yeah, I mean, I was obsessed with some of this stuff, like I said, for long before I got the job. So I've been thinking about like some of this stuff for a while. I mean, I really was thinking like, oh, if I was, so before, again, before I even talked to them, I had a notebook that was literally like, if I was going to start G.I. Joe today, here's how I would do it differently. And thankfully, a lot of my ideas lined up with what Robert was thinking. And so
Yeah.
I was already doing the math for a long time of like, how do I make some of this stuff work? Because there are, you know, there's a lot of stuff between the comics and the cartoon that contradict each other.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, so how do I make these things work? But again, being able to start at the beginning, that helped immensely. That helped immensely, because it's like, okay, we're starting here, and then I can kind of merge and pick and choose as I go through, you know. But and obviously having Transformers, like I think that's the thing that people have to consider, is
Yeah.
that having it also start with Transformers being a factor, that changes a
Mhm.
lot of stuff. You know, it changes the way, you know, you look at the stuff that's going on with Cobra Commander. Transformers impacts that story. You look at the stuff
Mhm.
going with Duke, and obviously the stuff with Duke was impacted by the Transformers. So it allows me to kind of change things up in a way, I think, that makes sense on a character level, and also just very organic. Just very organic.
Yeah. Like I think that's worked out really well because, so much of the original G.I. Joe is kind of set from characters from their experiences in
Yep.
Vietnam, where your war starts with the Transformers arrival. And it's such a cool starting place where, when they were doing G.I. Joe Transformer crossovers in the comics, it was like, oh, this is fun. I really love this approach now that you all are doing, because it's this, oh man, this is how this would really play out. There'd be this big conspiracy. No, you didn't see giant robots running around. That didn't exist at all. And, so you've got this big conspiracy uncovering deal going on in Duke. And with Cobra Commander, you're seeing this from a totally different perspective, one that I didn't see coming. I don't think a lot of other people are coming. And you mentioned your love of the G.I. Joe property. I think it's kind of beaten down unfairly. Could you talk about G.I. Joe, the movie, and how that impacted your love of G.I. Joe?
I didn't know. It's funny, like this last year, I was surprised sometimes about like how the fandom. I knew the fandom was divided. I had said this before on certain things, like some people love stuff, some people hate stuff. But that's true of every fandom, like there are parts of fandoms, everyone has their opinions as part of the fun. It's part of the fun of fandoms, right? And
Mm-hmm.
with this, I was kind of surprised in some places. With the G.I. Joe movie, it is something that just me and Skybound, we all love it. Robert talks about this. That has one of the greatest openings. That whole
It's the
sequence with the Statue
greatest.
of Liberty and the song. What's that?
It's the greatest. It is just from the moment
Oh, it's the
Cobra
greatest.
starts descending
Yeah.
down. It's like, wow.
You know what's funny is as a kid, I liked Flint when I watched the movie. Now as an adult, I'm always like, Flint's okay, like.
You're
But
killing
when
me.
I was a
Flint's still my
kid,
favorite
I
Joe.
really loved that movie. Well, so the movie definitely played a big influence on some of the stuff we're doing. But the
Mhm.
biggest influence we had of all of it, um, really was Larry Hama. I mean, an obvious way, in just the sense that obviously he's the godfather of it. He's the creator. But for me, whenever I'm working on anything, whenever we introduce a new character, the first thing I do is I go back and I read the file cards that he wrote. Like that is to me is the core of each character, right? So if I'm
Exactly.
introducing a character, I go read the file card first, and then everything spins out of that. So everything grows out of that. So even the changes we're doing, I'm like, no, this is the core of who that person is. Like I'm never gonna change what's on that card,
Right.
And so we go from there. Like we build from there. And so that's probably the biggest influence, a lot of stuff. And I think it's a testament to this property. Because that's the thing about the toys. It's funny because I have so many toys here. It's like when I stare at them sometimes, and I'm just like, man, the amount of like diversity, the amount of characters, the personalities they had, they were all so distinct and different. There
Hmm.
was so much going on that it's like that's why I think as kids we really gravitated towards it because of that. There was so much character there. And so yeah, that's the thing with the book. I think that's the biggest influence we have on this stuff, at least for me, is that stuff. And just looking at it and trying to keep that going and make sure they all are different characters.
Hmm.
Um, you know, yeah, I just really want to make sure it feels like that. I don't know, like the core pieces are correct. That's how I always feel. And then we spin our own twists on it and take the story in different directions. But we always make sure those character bits are correct. Yeah, yeah,
I'm like you. I think a lot of G.I. Joe fans who collected the figures refer to the file cards as the character Bible. Like you could do whatever, but this character has to be in this. Like Scarlet's got to be a martial artist, undercover specialist who's just wild and can beat anybody. And Baroness has to have this aristocratic edge to her. The twins have to be these absolute business savvy moguls. And you could
yep.
do whatever other kind of twist you want to do, but they have to line in with that. And on that front, what
Yep.
was the character that is you're writing and maybe you haven't revealed that character yet that you found yourself enjoying writing more than you expected to when you started?
I would say Clutch kind of surprised me. Like, that's a bit of a spoiler. I think the preview's already out there, but
Yeah,
like,
it is. It is.
Clutch is such a different personality. Like, I mean, Clutch is the opposite of Duke in a lot of ways because he's kind of a sleazy guy in comparison. Like, Duke is like a very, even though Duke's going through what he's going through, he's like still an upstanding dude. Like, he's still trying to do what he believes is the right thing. And then you get Clutch, who's just like not that at all. Like, Clutch is sort of, he's a little bit of a jerk in comparison. So he's been interesting. But there's other characters. I can't spoil stuff.
Sure.
There's stuff in Cobra Commander I can't spoil that have been really fun to write that I enjoy. But yeah, all of them. I mean, dude, I the biggest problem I have on this book, and I've talked about this in like every interview, is my patience because I just want to write all the characters. I want to get them all in there as soon as I can, and I can't do that. I got to make sure it's always a cool moment for every time we introduce them. I got to make sure everybody
Yeah.
gets their time.
Right.
I don't want to like because I recognize with this that like every GI Joe, like everybody has their favorite GI Joe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to make sure I'm respectful of that. Like everybody gets to have their moment for their character they like. So it's been fun, but it's like yeah, I'm always trying to find ways of getting them all in there. But yeah, originally, like Duke number one had more GI Joes and it had more Cobra people in it too, and they were like, "Slow down, dude, slow down." And that was when I realized we were going to introduce one of my favorite Cobra people. We were going to introduce him in the background. This is when I learned the lesson. We were going to introduce like one of my favorite Cobra characters in the background. He was going to be like a thing that you clearly see him, but he was going to be
Uh-huh.
a background element in a scene. And they were like, "Why would you do that? Like, if that's your favorite, one of your favorites, why would you do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. Like, they should show up and it should be dope, like super dope." So we cut all that out. We like strip stuff out just to make sure that like when it does happen, it's like, oh, that person's doing something super cool when they get
Yeah.
introduced every single time. Like everybody has a cool moment. Or at least something that's a character moment that like, oh, I know who that person is. Like it's not just like them standing in the background. Because it's a lesson I've learned over time that it's like it's not about what the character. It can't just be a character shows up and stands there. It has to be doing something. So that's the thing with all of this. And so yeah, there's been a lot of characters that I've enjoyed getting in here. But yeah, the patience, dude, it's interesting.
I would
Because what
imagine
happens is sometimes I'll open a toy, and I'm like, oh man, I don't put this character in the book. Like, how can I do that?
how to work in Wolf Spider right away. Yeah, it was
Oh,
funny
dude, yeah, I
because
have, but Wolfspider's not gonna be a while because I just got Wolfspider the other day and he looks cool, and I was like, I can't put him in for a while. Like, I gotta. I had a moment where I was like, you know what? I know where to put him. I know where to put him. But I was like, no, 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 I gotta wait. I gotta wait. I gotta wait.
gotta pace yourself. Yeah, I think when you
Yeah. Well,
mentioned
we have a
that,
lot, and that's the thing. Also, with this, the thing is that we have time. I mean, that's one of the things early on. Robert was like, listen, you have time. Like, do not rush. Take your time with it. Like, don't feel like you have to rush anything. And that made me feel like a lot better about stuff in general. Like, you always want more time. You want more room.
right?
And I feel like sometimes I always feel like I'm in a rush. And so with this, it was like slow down, slow down, slow down. And so that, I was able to do that and really take my time with the book. And I'm really proud of it. Like, I'm really proud of Duke #1. I'm really proud of Cobra Commander #1. I keep telling people the last year, I'm like, yo, Cobra Commander last year, I guess last 6 months. Cobra Commander is not what you expect it's going to be, you know?
I think in the context of this story, Cobra Commander is really like surprisingly, I was like, Joshua Williamson on Cobra Commander is gonna be good. But the direction you took with it, I think is such a surprise, and people are going to know what to expect until they keep reading. Like I think this one, if you get it spoiled, you're
Yeah.
not going to appreciate it nearly as much. And then you take it in like,
Yeah.
whoa, this is wild. It's opening up so many possibilities.
That book, I want. I think it's way about both books. That one a little bit more than Duke sometimes, but with both books, I want people. It's tough, right? Because you're trying to appeal to audiences, and
Mhm.
obviously the GI Joe is also there's different audiences within GI Joe, but like I want to appeal to people who are fans of the property. Like I definitely want that. I want people who are fans of it to read it and enjoy it. But we have to grow that audience, like we have to. And that's actually been one of the things that was really surprising this last year was like I didn't realize how big the Transformers audience was in comparison. Like I just didn't. It didn't click to me. I never put. I was like, I thought they were equal ground the whole time. You know, and then this last year was the first where I was like, oh wow, like Transformers has a bigger audience. Not a bad way. It just does, right?
Mhm.
And that, or at least a more. I don't know. It's weird now because now I'm looking at stuff a little bit more, but maybe it's the casual audience is bigger, right? Maybe that's it.
Mhm.
But to me, I want to grow that audience up. And so it's like if you're a new person that's never read G.I. Joe in your life, I have to also appeal to you. So I'm always trying to find those balancing between those, but I also want to make sure that both books have a lot of like, oh shit moments, moments where both of us are like excited and stuff happens that you're like, oh crap, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Like for Duke, it was that appearance of Mercer. And I was like, is that? And then it was like, oh, that's Ashley Mercer. How cool that he gets worked into issue 1. And then with the preview, not even without any until they saw the certificate, I was like, I wonder if that's Clutch. And I think the way you're breaking down these characters and introducing them, newcomers are going to be like, cool, this guy is pretty interesting. But long-term fans will be like, oh my gosh, what a cool way to work them in. So I think you hit a right balance with that. And I really think this is going to be accessible to people who kind of casually stumbled into Transformers from the movies. And we can debate their quality, but I think you guys have found the right approach to appeal to everyone with these. If with your older properties, I know we talked about Flash and was like, how long are you staying on this book? And you're like, they're gonna have to kill me to get rid of me. And along the way on that run of yours, you're seeing characters that you created on the TV show. And I was thinking with these first 2 issues of Duke and Cobra Commander, how easy would this be to take into a TV show or approach this as your movie connection? Have you guys thought about that? Or like, hey, Paramount, this is be really easy to make this your movie setup for these properties going forward.
And it was funny because I was trying to figure. I was wondering where the question was going because I was like, "Yeah, Flash, I stayed on for 100 years, so on this I'm going to stay on this for a while. Like, I want to stay on this for a bit. I have ideas.
Yeah.
Obviously, I want to bring in a lot of stuff, and the plans we have, we talk about stuff that's like way down the line stuff. Like, we have all kinds of ideas and moments and big beats we want to hit that are like
Mhm.
way far out. Um, Yeah, that'd be awesome. Right now, it's funny. Like I debated on creating new characters, and we've
Mm.
gone back and forth on it. And I had created one that was supposed to be in Duke, and then we just ran out of room. Um, and so yeah, I do want to bring in some new stuff, but right now my priority is like there's so much already here. There's so many toys on the table I want to play with. I kind of want to play with them first. Like I
Mhm.
might be able to introduce like one or two over time, but right now I'm a little more interested in just kind of taking these toys that are already there and like doing something different with them. So it's like, for example, you see Mercer. Mercer's already working for Destro here, right? Or is working for Destro here, and that's different than the stuff that was with him in the past, where it was him with the Crimson Guard, and it's like his history has always been really fascinating to me because it's like, oh, this guy started with Cobra and defected, and he's the only one to
Right.
ever do that. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to show him over there. And the question is, does he actually defect or not? Does that actually happen? And it's like he's already had this one run in with Duke, and so I'm kind of like, well, let's just keep him over there for a while. Let's see what happens, and then
Yeah.
you never know, maybe he never makes it over. But so it's stuff like that I guess I'm a little more interested in. But man, that would be dope. Like no lie, like one of my things with this is like I want toys that are based off of this. Like I think that's the priority number one for me is that, and then yes, it would be really cool to see or to work on anything in that realm because I do feel like you were saying, it's like it would be awesome to have another GI Joe cartoon on. Like I know that a lot of times they focus on the movies, but I would love another GI Joe cartoon. I know there's been a few over the years. Like there
Mhm.
was. God, I don't know how long ago Renegades was. Renegades was a while ago, I feel like
Yeah,
now.
it was.
So yeah, yeah. So I mean, it'd be nice to have some more stuff out there and another thing like that. And if they take anything that we've been building to do that, that would be dope. I would be super happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reading like, geez, this is such an easy switch over to the small screen on Paramount Plus or whatever, or doing long form movies with this connected
Dude,
universe.
I think that's the thing with GI Joe is that I think it has to be a TV show, either a TV
Yeah,
show or a cartoon. Like I think because you have so many characters and the kind of story that I think leans into it. I mean, even you look at the Larry Hama comics, it's standalone a lot, but it's also very serialized and it was very world
right.
building. And it's like that's TV show stuff.
Yeah.
And not to say you can't do that in a movie, but I feel like there's something about GI Joe just applies better to TV. So that
Hmm.
would be my hope and stuff. I have no input on that, but I mean, I wish I did just because it'd be fun, because I'm having a blast with it. I mean, that's the thing with this whole property. We've just been having a lot of fun. Like it's been awesome. It's like it's the easiest thing I work on right now. I say that knock on wood. It could get hard someday, but right now it's just like, just having a lot of fun and, yeah, it's been a blast, dude. Like we had at New York Comic Con, me and Sean Makowitz and Robert Kirkman and Tom Riley and Daniel, we all had dinner together and we were just talking about all kinds of crazy ideas. I was like, I want this to happen. Daniel's like, I want this to happen. Robert's like, well, this will happen. It was funny at one time because we were at one table. It was a big table. It was like a really big
Uh-huh.
table. And Robert, like Ryan Otley was sitting next to Robert. And so they were talking about stuff. But
Yeah.
we're over here like deep transference G.I. Joe stuff. And then I was like, but Robert, you could tell Robert was listening to like both conversations. And then Robert leans over and he was just like, oh, and then this happens, this happens, this happened. And we were all like, yes. Like it was all like this really cool stuff that we were like, yeah, it would be dope. And then like Sean would be like, what if this happens? And we were like, yeah. So it's just, it's been really fun. And then and also with that, like Tom Riley's art totally kills it on Duke number one. I mean, he just went for it. That scene with Mercer is really funny because I think in the script I said like 3 guards or something. I was like, oh, and then like 3 guards like dogpile him and they start messing with them. We got to make sure that Duke feels like this is a dude who's never gonna give up. So it's gonna take like at least 3 guards to take him down. And then Tom was like, 3 guards. I'm gonna draw like 20. He dribble in there. And I was like, dude, he gets it. I was like, oh yeah, this is how you
Yes.
do it. This is how you get. This is how in my wrestling lingo. I'm like, this is how you get Duke over. I
Exactly.
always think about, dude, I love wrestling logic. Wrestling logic is like some of the best
Makes
storytelling
it
logic
great.
I use all the time. And that's the thing about Daniel, because Daniel is such a big wrestling fan that I'm like, there
Yes.
are times we talk, I'm like, yo, dude, and I break it down for him in like wrestling stuff. And I use
Right.
old matches in his example. I'm like, yo, man, remember when Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels, they never wrestled each other and they wouldn't even want to touch each other? And they made a whole thing about how they couldn't touch each other at WrestleMania. Mwah, mwah. And it built this whole thing up of like, oh man, if they do fight. And that stuff, I love that stuff. Like you get two faces in a thing together and they like bump each other by accident.
Right.
And they never actually fight, but it gives the audience a like, oh, should they fight? We talk about stuff like that. Like that stuff. And but yeah, that's why I always think about this a lot when a character loses. Like they have to lose in a way. So it's like Stone Cold losing to Bret Hart. It's like he didn't tap, he didn't get pinned. He blacked out his own blood.
Right.
That's right. So I think about this a lot where I'm like, so with Duke, it was like, okay, so it can't be Mercer. It's got to be a bunch of guards. And then Tom was like, well, I'm going to draw 20 guards.
And that's the cartoon sensibility too.
It totally worked out.
Duke and Snake Eyes were always fighting like a massive Cobra Troopers before they get beat down.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Cobra Commander. You know, you look at the stuff that Andrea's doing. Andrea's just killing it on that book, and it's just amazing looking. And like, it has that different tone. Like, I mean, they're very built to be parallel with each other, but they're totally different. You know, so it's like the Duke is a bit more of like espionage thriller action. You know, it's a bit more of that, whereas in this it's a bit more of a different kind of thriller, right? It's a little bit more horror, a little more. There is some sci-fi elements, obviously. It's like there's something different going on over here. And so I think art wise, it allows both of them to be tonally different. And Andrea has been bringing that, and like there's stuff coming up that Andrea draws that are just like, oh, like, it's so cool, just going for it in weird ways. There's stuff in that. I'm telling you, when people read like Cobra Commander issue 2, there's a part Cobra Commander issue 2 that I couldn't even believe we got away with it. So I'm surprised. Like people are gonna be like, people are gonna have like some what the fuck moments when it comes to issue 1, but issue 2, people are gonna be like, what?
Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe what was going on. I was like, this is going to be amazing because it just felt like, this opens up so much more and how this all connects and links. You know, you mentioned all the Energon crew that you're working with. Do you get that sense that y'all are working on something that 10, 15 years from now, people are like, remember the start of the Energon universe? This is so amazing how they got this going. Because I feel like this is something special. You get all these imprints that start up and they, start out really strong and then they kind of fizzle out. But I feel like there's a lot more here for you all.
Yeah, I do think so. I feel like because there's so much love into this and we all have these things these stories we want to tell in this realm, and it's really an important property. Like this whole universe is a very important property for Skybound, and they're really you can tell, like they're putting a lot of love and care into it. There's putting a lot of thoughtfulness into it, and you have to be able to to want that, right? Like you want this to be something that can stand the test of time, and it's going to be different. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, listen, this is part of why I think that Transformers has worked so well is that they kind of reboot it every few years, right? It's like every 3 or 4 years, like 5 years max, but before they do a new cartoon, it's same with Ninja Turtles, right? Ninja Turtles will be like, here's a new cartoon, like every so many years, right? And I think that's expected. That's going to happen. Like, that's just kind of part of what you've seen of like these kinds of properties. But for us, we're like, we just want to make sure that this one is one that again that we would love. Like that's the thing with me with this whole property. Again, I'll come back to what we said at the beginning. I wanted to make a book that if I picked this up off the shelf, I would have been like, this is dope. And that's the most important thing to me with this is that. And like I want to make sure that people like me who are fans of the property, when they get it, they go, yes, this is cool. And again, I want new readers to go, yes, this is cool too. Like those are the two parts. But that's it. So at the end of this, like when I decide, okay, I told my story, I'm done. I want to be like, okay, cool, I did what I set out to do, right? And so I believe it'll be that way, though. I feel like because of the care that Skybound is putting into this, that I believe it will be that, yeah.
Yeah, so 2 more questions and they got to run. How are you balancing all these really fun Easter eggs? Like, I was not expecting to see Doc Burkhart show up in Duke, and I was like, wow, this guy gets everything that matters in G.I. Joe. With this cameo, we get the random Easter egg with Dr. Mindbender tease. Yeah. It's like, oh wow, this is fun. How are you navigating? All right, I want to put all these Easter eggs in, and okay, let's sprinkle a few in there and see how many people catch them all.
Well, I mean, it's just part of the fun. Like, I don't know, it's just fun. Like, it's just like it's the same way I was with DC stuff. A lot of stuff is just in my head. So when I'm working, I'm like, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Oh, about this, about this, about this. With the Del Burkhart, that was I knew that from the beginning. We were like, oh, he's when I was writing the outline, I was like, oh, he'll totally meet Del Burkhart because she's also in G.I. Joe #1. So I'm like, okay, this This is a
Yeah,
way to sort of,
I can see what
reflect
you're.
these things. And I have a friend who he, like I know this stuff, but I still approach it like I know it, but I have a friend who like really knows it. Really knows it. And so he's been funny because like he reads the scripts and he'll read them. Like I don't think he's a secret or not, but he's like an actual consultant. And so he's not just my buddy. I mean, he's my buddy, but he's also like an actual consultant. And so
Nice.
he reads them, and then he'll bust out with like, "Oh, well, have you thought about this, this, and this?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, dude. Okay, we're doing that." Way more on the Transformer side than the G.I. Joe side. Like the G.I. Joe side is funny. Sometimes he'll throw in stuff that he's like, "I don't want to ruin your day," but blah 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 blah. And I'm like, "No, no, no, that works. You're right. Okay, all right." And like, "Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, all right." But yeah, I mean, with that, it is hard sometimes to balance out all of it. But at the end of the day, it's just fun, dude. Like I don't know, it's a lot of it's in my head, right? So it's like, oh, I got to make these books for Duke to have been reading. Okay, I like Dr. Mindbender. I got my Dr. Mindbender toy right here. So I was
Nice.
like, I haven't opened this yet. I love his packaging
Oh,
too much. I haven't opened it yet. I mean,
his
I've
and
opened it to look
Serpentor.
at it, but I haven't opened it. Opened it, yeah. Like this is a dope package. It
Yeah.
bugs me.
Did you get Chuckles yet?
I breaks my heart. Oh yeah,
Did you
he's
get
up here. Yeah,
Chuckles?
I got Chuckles.
Okay, nice. Very
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
All right.
I got
So
dude. Mutt is supposed to show up today.
yes, very good. So you're right there with me.
Yeah,
You're like, okay, got to get these guys. All right. Most important question. Most important.
yeah.
Team Duke Scarlet or Scarlet Snake Eyes?
I can't answer that question. Um, yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. All right. Well, listen, listen. I'm Scarlet Snake Eyes. And I feel bad for Duke because I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, man, I gotta find a girl for Duke. I gotta figure some stuff out. I was doing some research on this, and I was like looking back at stuff, and I guess I'm a Snake Eyes Scarlet, a Scarlet person. But as you know, there are no plans for Snake Eyes like anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't know who Snake Eyes is. Who's Snake Eyes? That's why that question is difficult. But no, I'm a yeah, I'm a Scarlet Snake Eyes person. But yeah, poor Duke. I got to figure
Yeah.
something out for him.
We'll figure it out. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I think everyone who reads these comics is going to enjoy it for however long you stay on. Hopefully that's 10, 15 years to go. But throughout however long you're on, it's going to be a blast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, it's always good to
Yeah.
talk to you. Sorry for the internet problems, but
No
yeah, hopefully
worries.
we do this again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Take
thank
care.
you.